Well, good afternoon, everybody. Everybody settling in. The food looked wonderful. Appreciate everybody coming in. I hope you're having a great week at the Boston Tech Summit and Operations. So it's been great. What a city, right? What a building. What a view, and what a program they have planned for you. As you think about AI adoption, and as it accelerates, the focus is increasingly shifting from capability to responsibility. That includes trust, transparency, governance, and measurable outcomes. On behalf of Oracle, thank you again for coming to this event. Education is one of the most important environments for these conversations, especially as generative AI becomes more integrated into learning and decision-making. At Oracle, we're focused on helping organizations operationalize AI. They're using our cloud infrastructure, our AI services, and data platforms to bring this to life, and they're designed for scale. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Azure, but I'm going to ask a question. How many people here have used Oracle OCI? Show of hands. Okay, one or two. How many people here have ordered an Uber? Show of hands. You have all used Oracle OCI. So Uber primarily is hosted and operated on Oracle. So great program. We're thrilled to sponsor this. I'm thrilled to have a huge crowd here. I gave up a couple extra seats down low if anybody wants to join. But without further ado, let me introduce Azure to begin the program.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Azar Pistavros. I am the William Fairfield Warren Distinguished Professor of Computer Science and the inaugural head of the Faculty of Computing and Data Sciences. We go by CDS. CDS is an interdisciplinary cross-cutting academic unit launched 6 years ago to connect BU's 17 schools and colleges through the lingua franca, the common language of computation, data, and AI. Our mission, quote unquote, from our mission statement, to conduct research that matters to society, provide students with rigorous education and vibrant academic experiences that unleash their innovative capacities, and to democratize access by learners, researchers, practitioners, and the public to the transformative power of computation, data, and AI. That's our mission. CDS is thrilled to support the very first Tech Week held here in Boston, a city with extraordinary strength in education, healthcare, entrepreneurship, AI, and research. So on behalf of the faculty and students and staff of CDS, I want to welcome you all to our beautiful home on the BU campus, the iconic Duane Family Center for Computing and Data Sciences. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to, before we go into the program, just recognize several Boston University leaders whose support have helped make today possible. First, our president, Melissa Gilliam, our provost, Gloria Waters, Ken Lucien, our vice president and associate provost for research, Dean Bishop, Penny Bishop, Dean of Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. We'll hear from her in a few minutes. And Michelle Sheely, senior vice president for institutional advancement, who, as I understand, she said, after hearing about Silicon Valley coming to Boston, let's embrace it. And many colleagues across Boston University. Today's conversation sits at the intersection of several urgent and important questions. How do we ensure that AI serves humanity responsibly? How do we support educators and students during a period of rapid technological transformation? And how do we move beyond abstract principles toward measurable real-world impact? So those are exactly the kind of questions and challenges that CDS seeks to address through cross-disciplinary dialogue in our classrooms and labs. To do this today, we need to get into the spirit of being in a classroom. To help us with that, I hear that we have some amazing educators in the audience. So let me introduce one of them to you, my colleague and friend, Dean Penny Bishop of the Wheelock College of Education and Human Development, whose expertise in learning, child development, and educational systems brings essential perspective to AI in education, both at BU Wheelock College of Education and Human Development and the world beyond. Penny, look at this great group of assembled students today. They are ready for you.
Appreciate the warm welcome. Okay, so hi everyone and welcome. In full transparency, I'm a former middle school teacher and we just can't help ourselves when we have a group in front of us. I'm going to give you an immediate assignment. It's called a think, pair, share. Anyone know what that is? Okay, we see some folks, all right. So it basically is, I'm gonna give you a question. You're gonna think about it quietly for 30 seconds. Then you're gonna turn to your neighbor, you're gonna pair, and you're gonna share out with that one person what you thought about. And then I'm gonna take the share part. We're just gonna hear from a couple of you because this is not actually a class, and so we're gonna keep it tight, and we're gonna move into the rest of the content. So a think, pair, share. Got it? You with me? You ready to have some fun? Okay. So my question for you, I'm gonna put you in a situation. So here it is. You walk into a middle school classroom today, and you see AI in use. What excites you and what makes you nervous? You walk into a middle school classroom, you see AI in use. What excites you and what makes you nervous? 30 seconds, just think about it for a second. Okay, finish up whatever thought you're on, please. I'm going to pull together the group, counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. What's one thing that you are excited about? One person. What's one thing you're excited about? Or maybe that your partner is excited about? Anyone? Yes?
Individualized education depending on your preference for how to learn.
Yes, individualized education depending on one's preference of how to learn. Great. One other thing that we're excited about. Way over there. Stacy's running. I didn't warn her about this part.
I was just saying, elevating the learning experience is something that's exciting, right? Like if they use it as a tutor, as a tool, as like bouncing off and just how can I improve this, and that's exciting. I think with the use of AI.
Absolutely. Elevate. I love that verb. Thank you. Okay, let's turn the tables here. What are we nervous about? One thing we're nervous about. Sorry, Stacy.
I can speak loudly. I'm nervous about there being. I'm nervous about like any evidence that this actually works. I don't know. It's been like 4 or 5 years. Can you prove it to me?
Yeah.
Because my taxpayer money is being spent here.
Yeah.
So
Evidence and the benefit of the cost. All right. And one more. Yes. Something else we're
Excited and nervous about the shift from how AI will impact the shift from output-based learning to project or process-based learning for students.
interesting. From output-based to project-based or process-based. Thank you. Great. Okay. Great. I'll invite you for the rest of our time together to keep those things in mind, and also to keep in mind the other pieces that you talked about with one another just a moment ago. And I'm going to turn things back to Azar. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny, and thank you all for being good students in the classroom. One of the things I appreciate most about gatherings like this is that they bring together people from many disciplines, sectors, around shared questions that are simply too important to solve in isolation. That spirit of convergence is central to the mission of Boston University and to CDS. And today's program is an excellent example of what is possible with AI-driven convergence. So this afternoon's program will include the following. We'll start with an announcement of a new partnership. Then we'll move on to a discussion of the AI index, AI ethics index. And then we'll have a broader panel conversation on AI in education. We want to hear from you, questions from the audience, and we'll have a reception afterwards when we're all done. So to start, it is with great excitement that I announce a new partnership between Just Horizons Alliance and Boston University Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. I'd like to invite my colleagues to signing the agreement. So through the AI Ethics Index, Just Horizons brings deep technical and ethical expertise in AI, together with Wheelock's expertise in learning, child development, equity, and educational systems. This partnership will help ensure that educational impact remains central to how AI systems are evaluated and implemented. This collaboration reflects the kind of convergent interdisciplinary work that happens in Boston University. So please join me in celebrating that partnership. Yes, please. A formal letter of intent is now being signed, and we'll hold a ceremonial photo at the end of the program for that. Bravo! Congratulations. It's now my pleasure to introduce two of my colleagues who will tell us more about Just Horizons and the AI Ethics Index. First, Dr. Wesley Wildman. Wesley is a marvelous embodiment of convergence and the type of interdisciplinary work that CDS is all about. Wesley holds dual appointments in the School of Theology and in the Faculty of Computing and Data Sciences as one of its inaugural Joanne Faculty Fellows. He's a professor of philosophy, theology, and ethics, and is a leader in interdisciplinary AI and ethics scholarship here at BU and worldwide. Wesley has been instrumental in helping shape this collaboration and advancing conversations around responsible AI and society. The tool you will soon learn about, the AI Ethics Index, was created here at BU with Wesley's graduate students and has been brought to the world by the Just Horizon Alliance. We're also joined by Jeanette Kang, a BU Questrom School of Business alumna and Executive Director of the Just Horizons Alliance. Janet and I met, or I should say reconnected, on the snowy streets of Davos, where we discussed the growing need for practical, measurable approaches to ethical AI implementations. At Davos, I witnessed firsthand the global interest in this topic, so it was only natural that we, the BU delegation, found ourselves just wanting to have Janet in every meeting we had. And we knew that we needed to formalize this partnership when we returned home here to Boston. So now I invite Wesley and Janet to tell us more. Wesley.
Thank you so much, Azar. And I promise I don't have a lot of slides, but bear with me. So I'm Janet Kang, Executive Director of Just Horizons, and I spent a significant portion of my career building tech companies and venture ecosystems out of Silicon Valley. I saw firsthand how fast technology moves when it's purely driven by market forces. And so I shifted into this role in nonprofit and working in AI safety and ethics because I really believe that society needs an equally powerful force to protect public interest. And for the last 19 years, Just Horizons Alliance has been focused on the question that the market tends to ignore. What do these automated systems actually do to people? Answering that question requires a specific kind of approach. Half our teams are scientists, are computer scientists and data engineers. The other half are social scientists. We look at the code. We also look at the psychological and social impact on the ground. And we develop independent benchmarks and simulations to help the public, help our society understand and evaluate consequences of AI on the ground, especially as it relates to people. And we believe that that baseline is so urgent in schools today. Right? Move the slide. So this is clearly a problem slide. But before I go into that, I worked in tech so long to say that AI is the enemy. Right? AI works. And I believe in the promise of AI for student learning. I believe in the promise of AI for personalized instruction, to fill achievement gaps, to expand access. But today, school districts are being forced, teachers are being asked to use AI purely based on vendor promises, marketing materials, and demos, not independent evidence. I think someone talked about evidence as being needed, right, for adoption. The stat you see up there, 84%, College Board last year reported that 84% of high school students are currently using AI for their homework. If we retook that survey today, that's probably more like 95%. And yet there is not a single independent safety standard governing any of these AI tools, not a single one. And as researchers, or just people who have and care about kids, we see some really alarming consequences. We see AI that prioritizes engagement over learning. We see algorithmic bias to a point where there's systematic discrimination of students of color. We also see AI that does the thinking for students as opposed to helping them build the capacity to learn. And in some really serious cases, we also see systems that have zero capability to actually detect when a student has a mental health crisis. And so the way we think about this, and the reason we started this work in K-12, is K-12 is unlike any other sector because the developmental years are irreversible. To think that 84% number, and we do not have a single safety standard. There's no accountability in the market today. And so we're here to change that through this partnership. And I'd love to pass it on to Wesley, our founder, to talk a little bit about the index.
So great to see you all. So, the AI Ethics Index is a breakthrough approach to measuring the ethical behaviour of AI systems. It's not just principles or ideas, though there's plenty of those. It's a rigorously architected, automated measurement pipeline with the power to change the way we think about ethical accountability. Think of the AI Ethics Index like a small forest. Very small because there are precisely 9 trees. Each has a name corresponding to a big category in AI ethics. Some categories are familiar from AI safety testing, like fairness, privacy, transparency, safety and security. Others are newer territory, model development, human AI interaction, knowledge and attribution, societal impact, governance and accountability. This is level 1 of the AI Ethics Index. Each L1 tree has a few level 2 branches, which we call L2 subcategories. For example, the transparency L1 category tree has 3 L2 subcategory branches: disclosures and documentation, explainability and rationale, auditability and traceability. Each L2 branch has several level 3 twigs, which we call L3 testable claims. For example, within the L1 transparency tree, along the L2 auditability and traceability branch, there's a little L3 twig called the AI system creates detailed logs to support accountability and auditing. You've probably guessed by now, at the end of each twig there are a bunch of leaves, which we call L4 indicators. These are the things we build an automated pipeline to measure. Some leaves require us to read documents, while others assess system behaviour. And you probably won't be surprised to hear that AI systems don't always do what they promise in their documentation. This little forest currently has 38 branches, 91 twigs, and 279 leaves on its 9 trees, as it maps out the domain of AI ethics. But here's the thing about this forest. The same 279 leaves can be regathered into new trees on demand, composites, each built for a particular question. An insurance company says they want help figuring out which AI products to insure. We've got a composite tree for that. The American Association of Retired Persons asks us to make recommendations for how to think about AI safety for seniors. We've got a composite tree for that. And most importantly on this occasion, we have a composite tree for AI in education to help K-12 schools and leaders make informed decisions about AI procurement and child well-being. AI ethics has seemed too intangible to measure. The index is our bet that there's a flexible pattern underneath, the way chemistry once found the periodic table of elements beneath the everyday substances around us. Of course, some important features of life can get lost when we measure, especially if we forget that measurements aren't the whole story. But we gain things from measurement too, including the possibility of holding AI tools and companies accountable, and a deeper understanding of the potential effects of AI tools on our children. We can't unring the AI bell. We're never going to forget the technologies that gave birth to machine learning, artificial neural networks, and backpropagation. We're never going to forget the transformer technology that yielded large language models. AI is here to stay, like the atomic theory of matter and the theory of relativity. The urgent challenge of our time is to live responsibly and safely with AI, for which a rich awareness of AI ethics is arguably our greatest asset. So that's the AI Ethics Index, a small forest now, with room for many more composite trees, built so we can see and measure what was too easily once called intangible. Starting today, that includes the AI tools our children meet in their classrooms where they learn, forge identities, and become responsible citizens. Back to you, Janet.
Good. Thank you so much, Wesley. And we are so excited to be partnering with Wheelock on this. This is truly a dream partnership, not only because I'm an alum, Wesley, our founder, is also a Boston University professor, but because we get to co-create this with world-class experts at Wheelock. So Penny, if you want to share some perspectives on the Pardon? Yes.
So I am thrilled to be here with you all today. This is my second year here at Boston University and at Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. So I'm still learning a lot. And for context, for those of you who might not know BU Wheelock, as we call it, because it's a very long name otherwise, we have about 1,400 students, undergraduate through PhD. We have programs that are broad in terms of their areas of expertise. They include early childhood education, elementary and secondary education, some of the things you expect to see in a college of education, but don't forget the human development side of things. So we also have language and literacy, deaf studies, counseling, psychology, human development. We have policy and leadership, a whole array of things that are very much focused on human thriving and growing. Our college is the outcome of a 2018 merger between the historic Wheelock College, which was in Brookline, and BU's then School of Education. Those two combined in 2018 to become our College of Education and Human Development here at BU. And we came together with a bold mission, and that is to transform inequitable systems. So you can see where this is going already with that, and you can probably start to see why this feels like such a good partnership to us. This systems orientation of our college has been consistent since our beginning, and it continues, I think, to distinguish us from many other colleges of ed across the nation. It means that we prepare professionals not only to work within systems in the world, but also to transform those systems with an eye toward making them more equitable, more just, more sustainable. So that's also the lens that we bring to the AI conversation. It is exciting to me that we have so many things happening in this space in our own college right now and with colleagues at BU. So for example, in partnership with Hariri and CDS, we have the AI in Education Initiative, which is catalyzing research at the intersection of AI and learning. We've established the Eval Industry Collaborative, which evaluates AI tools to ensure that they align with how students learn and how teachers teach in diverse settings. We have 2 new graduate programs rolling out in September on AI in education that are designed to help educators and leaders engage with AI tech in ways that keep student learning and student well-being and equity at the center. And faculty in our college are engaged with the role of education and AI and that intersection through their research and teaching in many ways. And just a few of the questions that we're pursuing in the college include, how can AI support high-quality STEM professional development at scale? How can it strengthen early intervention tools for deaf children? How can it improve literacy supports for students? How can it support more equitable access to information for families navigating special education? How does it shape trust, learning, and belief revision for young learners? How do we ensure AI-driven tools support multilingual learners well? The list goes on. I want to invite my 3 BU Wheelock faculty colleagues at this moment, and if there are more, please raise your hand. But Ola and Amy and Naomi, will you just stand so that later on people can see you and seek you out and have longer conversations about these great questions? These are wonderful BU faculty, faculty right here with us today. Thank you for letting me embarrass you in that way. So, given all of this, what I've just shared briefly, I'm hoping that you can see that it was a bit of a no-brainer, as we say, to partner with Just Horizons. I feel like we share their commitment to equipping people and institutions to lead with clarity and compassion and courage. We share their vision of a more just and hopeful future, and we share their focus on systems transformation. And in this partnership, we certainly bring interest and knowledge about AI, but our primary role is really, I think, to help in this forest and with these trees, to fill out the trees with the expertise and knowledge that is the content area expertise in the fields of education and human development. So we are bringing to the partnership a deep understanding of pedagogy. Our faculty brings disciplinary expertise in terms of mathematics and social studies and reading and all those good things that we got in school, also special education and language acquisition, social emotional learning, child and adolescent well-being, all of those types of things that we know matter in terms of student growth and student well-being. So we're really excited to work with Just Horizons. And I'm excited too to dig into the questions that are to come. And before we move into that, I want to invite Sonia Koshi, who is Chief Research Officer at Kapor Foundation, to join us on the stage for the start of the panel discussion. And then I will turn things, I think, back to you, Azar. Thank you. What I didn't do was advance the slide. There we go.
Thank you, Penny. All right, now to the panel. Thank you all for being here. For context, I'd like to start with a round of questions, and I'm going to start with a question to Wesley. Wesley, you have worked at the intersection of ethics, human systems, and computing for years. Why does this moment feel different?
A little while ago, there was a release of some longitudinal studies on the effect of early use of social media on children. It took a while to get those longitudinal studies, but what we learned was increased anxiety that's quite difficult to correct and a series of attention deficits that are quite difficult to adjust. What we're doing with AI is amping that up enormously more. And we're doing it across the age range. And we're doing it at times when children have these special periods of their lives when they're capable of learning new skills. And as Janet said earlier, we're potentially messing with those processes of learning without any guardrails, without any real awareness of what the long-term downstream effects would be on these children. We're not talking about a couple of children tucked away in an advanced school somewhere. We're talking about millions of children worldwide. This is insane to behave this way. It's crazy to behave this way with children. AI is amazing. I'm a fan. I really am. But this poses the risk of irreversible damage to a generation of kids on the journey towards figuring out what those longitudinal studies will say 10 years from now. We just cannot operate that way with something this powerful. That's what makes this urgent, and why this cannot be delayed and it cannot be treated as just another tech puzzle to solve. This is so much more than that.
Thank you, Wesley. Okay, I'm going to turn it to Janet with context question. There are many conversations happening around AI in education right now. What gap did you see that led to the forming of the Just Horizons Alliance and the AI Ethics Index?
It's a great question. So today in my work, I interview teachers almost daily to try and understand what decisions they're trying to make, how they're trying to interact with AI, if at all. And I also talk to a lot of education leadership. And the big theme I see across the board is adoption. Everyone is asking questions around, how can I use AI? How can I train my teachers around AI? Which tool do I use? I think we're so much, I think the gap is that we're 12 steps behind the adoption question. We do not yet understand the consequences of AI to truly answer that question. And I'm not saying that means we don't use AI. I mean, what I'm trying to say is for certain vulnerable use cases, for certain age groups, we have to be more cautious. But even for that use case, we do not have the information to make a strong recommendation on what to do. And so I think the industry is obsessed with AI adoption in K-12 education, when I believe measurement, evidence-based measurement should come before that so that we can make stronger recommendations, we can make smarter decisions. I think often about this being a big experiment, right? You know, to talk about longitudinal studies. But who are we experimenting on? I'm fine being the subject of an AI experiment in the way I use it in my workday, but we're talking about our children. And so I think that's the gap I see, that we're talking about adoption before really understanding the full picture.
before developing even the tools to allow us to understand
That's right.
the impacts. Thank you. Sonia, thank you very much for joining the panel. Really appreciate it. So from the perspective of philanthropy and ecosystem building to help with this kind of work, where do you see the biggest gaps right now in how AI is being introduced into our educational systems?
Sure. So I'll give a little bit of my positionality within the space. So for me, I come from, similar to these lovely colleagues over here, I come from a background in child and youth development. And so I come from it centered on the child and K-12 students. Our organization, the K4 Foundation, is centered around building a more equitable tech ecosystem. So we take an intersectional approach on building a tech ecosystem that works, particularly for racially minoritized individuals and communities. The thing that I think everyone here probably knows and is working with an underlying assumption is that AI is not new, and yet it is being forced down our throats in a very unintentional, or actually an intentional way through tech, but an unintentional way through society generally. And so I think part of K4's mission has been to first define the narrative that is out there, which is AI is part of computer science. And I think that there's a lot of research out there about what has worked and what has not in computer science, and how do we then leverage that into this new space of AI education. That's one thing. So how can philanthropy help shape that story and that narrative? The second piece is around policy and governance. And I really appreciate this new initiative because I think that this is something that is essential in the field, which is a third party that is being able to come in and actually assess a system for whether or not it is for the good of an individual student. I don't think that there's enough out there, particularly in this moment of time where there is this collapsing of tech to civil society, right? So we already know who is in the room and who is in these spaces in terms of the decision-making with respect to policy. And so if the market forces are the ones that are controlling that guidance, that doesn't necessarily mean it is to the benefit of all. And so I think policy is also another space. Policy advocacy is a space that philanthropy has a privilege and a responsibility to really double down on. And then there's implementation. I think that we're conveners. I don't necessarily think that we're out there in the operating world all the time, 100% of the time. Again, the privilege of philanthropy is that we have funding, we have resources, particularly in this moment in time where there is not as much NSF funding coming. There isn't as much Department of Education funding coming. And so we have a responsibility to provide that funding and the resources to be able to convene implementers, to do more research practice partnerships, to be able to really have a well-rounded and holistic understanding of how AI education should be done and done well. So I would say that those are the three pieces of the philanthropy puzzle.
Thank you. All right, so from context, let's go down one level and just think about what's happening in schools today. So one of the challenges in conversations about AI is separating headlines from reality. So I'd like to ground us in what educators and institutions are actually experiencing right now. So a question to Penny, what's actually happening in schools right now with AI? Not the headlines, what are educators really dealing with day to day with that technology?
Well, I think we heard hints of that already a little bit in a few of these responses, and certainly in your stat around how often high schoolers are using it, and how many of you are parents? Just out of curiosity, raise your hand. Okay, well, you probably know the answer to this then, at least if you have parents in the K-12 system. It's there, it's in the classrooms, it's already alive. I won't necessarily say well, but it is absolutely present in classrooms. And I would say that both teachers and students largely feel alone in it. So by that I mean, yes, the adoption is there and the infrastructure is very thin. So in fact, there were 2 different reports that dropped this week, one from RAND and one from Gallup, on sort of the state of education, and AI questions are included in both of them. And so I just brought a couple of the pieces along because I found them so interesting. So over 85% of teachers feel unprepared to manage AI with students in their classrooms. About 60% of teachers are using it for administrative and planning purposes, but bringing it from there into the instruction there's a big gap there, and there is a lack of any sort of governance or policy around it. And so teachers feel very alone without that formal guidance and are struggling. And you can just readily imagine the kinds of things that happen in classrooms when you're using untested tools, when suddenly a tool begins to share personal data, or when a tool starts to ask questions of a child and those questions are not at the right level for that child. There are so many examples that we could give, hopefully none that you've experienced, but certainly that I hear from teachers regularly. And there's no frame for it, there's no infrastructure. Students feel similarly left alone or left to their own devices. So they most often reported using AI to get better explanations of assignments, to brainstorm ideas, to look up facts, and to draft or revise writing. But over 80% of the students said that teachers had not explicitly taught them how to use AI for schoolwork. So we've got teachers and students feeling a lack of guidance, and yet they're both using it.
Wow.
Sorry, it's not a rosy picture, but that's why we're together. That's why we're here. Those are the things that we're talking about.
Which is why I'm going to send my next question to Janet. So given what Penny just described, where are schools being asked to make decisions without enough support? Like if you can, I mean, we heard a little bit about students and teachers, but
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're being asked to make decisions across the board, whether it's to come up with policy for a specific school, an AI policy for the school, in producing training content for teachers, and actually procuring AI tools, and all while there isn't enough information on how to do that. I spoke to a teacher where that specific school district became a Google school, a Gemini school. So they implemented, I don't know if you know, there's a lot of schools are adopting Gemini as kind of their underlying AI ecosystem. And my very first question was, so as part of this implementation, did they do a training program for teachers on how you use Gemini? As a teacher, whether it's producing, teaching materials or, advising how students would use Gemini. The answer multiple times was no when I asked many, many teachers. And it was so surprising to me. When you do tech implementation, typically, there is a lot of training involved. And while the training, yes, is how to use the tool, it was never how to use the tool for a specific use case, right? Because teaching second grade math is very different from teaching ninth grade history, right? And not just the subjects alone, but also just obviously age group, right? Different part of the developmental cycle. And so I think schools are being asked to do something quite impossible. Yesterday we had a private dinner with some educators, and it was so alarming to me to hear this. They feel so much pressure to use AI. And we asked the question, where are you feeling this pressure from? And they couldn't quite answer it. It wasn't a specific board member of a school. It wasn't a specific group of parents. It is entirely, I think, just across the board, society. There's this pressure that if I'm not using AI, I'm doing the wrong thing. And while everyone is so well-intentioned, and we do talk to schools that are better equipped, right? They have more resources for better training, to hire AI consultants, for example. we're talking about probabilistic models, where you have to observe the behavior of the machine to truly assess whether or not it's working and not just go by the intent of the product builders. And so that's where I keep feeling we're 12 steps behind, because even if you think you know, unless you actually test the outputs and actually observe the behavior of these outputs, you truly do not know. So I feel the pain for educators right now on AI.
Sonia, how does that align with what organizations like yours are seeing around equity and access and enablement?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think a lot of it, just because of the lack of resources, stops at access. And it's like, okay, well, I've given you access to this, so what more could you want? And it's like we deprioritize everything human-led, right? Like we can put more resources into tech tools because that's an easy fix. I can give you 100 computers or iPads and tablets into your classroom. I can count that, right? Like I've provided that for this many students and that will provide this many classes. Unfortunately, we can no longer rely on access to be at equity. We have to consider what does participation look like, what does the experience look like, which are more difficult to measure. How do you actually measure the impact of providing a computer science or AI education into a classroom of third graders? Well, okay, so I've provided, let's say, some sort of Gemini-affiliated AI tool. Well, what's actually happening? What's the developmental milestones? What's the learning objectives being reached? Are the teachers being prepared? All of those things get kind of on the sidelines and not counted towards the actual outcome. And so I think that that's the piece that is missing in terms of really being able to say, we need to move beyond access now and actually count everything else within the classroom once access is actually provided.
Thank you. A lot of work I can see in that space. So, okay, so we heard what's missing, what's broken. We're also thinking about the AI Ethics Index. And so I'm going to see how that piece can help us with some of those things. But before I do that, there are already many ethical frameworks, principles, policy conversations underway around AI. But one of the themes emerging is that principles alone, white papers, websites, statements, that's not enough. So Wesley, the current approach seems to be focused on that. Why does that often fall short of practice?
What would you do with a list of principles? You would appreciate them probably. Maybe you would mention them at some point. This is a million miles away from being able to measure something, being able to automate the measure so you can measure it over and over and over again at different times, being able to drive auditing using a measurement system, to the point that people want to be audited so that they can build trust with their user base. This is where we need to get to. And the only way to get there is to use principles to build something. And that's what the AI Ethics is. The AI Ethics Index is a built product that's intended to transform the ecosystem of ethical awareness, not just with principles, but not in contradiction with them either. Harmonized with those principles to create something that actually changes the way social systems work.
Thank you, Wesley. So Wesley and I, of course, his office is just 2 offices down from me, and we talk a lot. I'm a computer scientist. He's a philosopher, theologian, and computer scientist, computational humanist, the best types. I can share with you that in computer science, we have benchmarks to measure, how graphics cards are fast, how many instructions they do per second. Just saying that in principle, I want the GPU to be fast, that doesn't do anything. But you develop a benchmark for it, and all of a sudden everybody will design to that benchmark. So in a way, if it's one way to measure and so on, but also to influence the development, because people now know that you're going to be measured on something. So I feel like this is really so beautiful, because it's not just empowering teachers to be able to evaluate, compare, make decisions, but I think it actually steers the development of this technology in the right way. So thank you for that. So Janet, question to you. One of the central ideas behind this work is moving from intent to measurable impact, and I just said even drive that impact in many ways. What does that mean in practice?
That means in practice, we're building something people are actually going to use. And that means that we actually have to co-create whatever it is with ultimately the user base. And that's the reason why we're partnering with Wheelock, to work with researchers that understand that from a disciplinary level, to understand what to measure. But in the sense of how that measurement actually comes to life is actually talking to educators, talking to education administrators, and understanding how that can be used in a procurement setting, how that can be used in a teacher professional development setting. And so for us, moving from just principles to practice is that full cycle. And so part of the work we're doing is also establishing regional partnerships with nonprofits that have access to different school districts. So we get a coalition of educators, and to also recognize that this isn't a one-size-fits-all. We're doing this regionally because what we understand is that the culture, the underlying infrastructure, wherever we go, has been so different. What we see in Alabama is entirely different from what we see in Nevada, for example. And so I have to admit it's a lot of work, but we're doing this really, truly in partnership with experts, both on the research side of things, but also on the application side. I think teachers have been so absent from this equation of AI in education. And we see it both ways, where they're missing in how we actually help them use the tool, but also because they feel so lonely, right? Because they're alone in using this without much guidance, teachers have also started to adopt AI in a way that's likely not beneficial for students. And so we see both sides of that with teacher use as well. So our approach has always been, let's involve them from the beginning. Let's co-create the solution so that this actually gets used.
Okay, I'm going to go off script a little bit because I'll follow up on a question here. So one thing you seem to be saying is, because different regions will perhaps develop the index in a different way, that also allows different regions to see how they are different from others, because in a way, now you get to see the sort of, you get to compare this school district or maybe that state to this other state. That's interesting, I never thought of that.
I want to add something to that, and this is the flexibility of what we're building today. Different schools have different mission statements, right? And they may choose, some schools may be more tech forward, some schools may be more arts forward, not to say that they always have to be in different places. So the way we think about the AI Ethics Index is to give schools the information so that they can make the right decision for their school. That means that that matrix will look different for schools that might want to take a bigger risk with AI because they have a huge, perhaps these are older grade kids, these are very tech forward kids that want to be creators and just want to go all the way with experimentation. And perhaps it also means that there are teachers always in the classroom to ensure that there is a trusted adult in a classroom setting. And so what we're trying to do is not be the judge in this equation to say this is right and this is wrong, but how do we surface that information, evaluate it at an atomic level so that you can then create what we call composites, where you can combine different risks together to kind of form your own risk profile for your school, and then go out and seek those tools for your students. So that's the approach we're taking.
All right, question for you, Penny. When you translate this into the classroom setting, what does good or bad actually look like to students and educators?
Well, I think I'm going to choose good.
Okay.
Because we've heard a lot of bad, and because you can flip it. I think good looks like truly inclusive, and the co-constructed nature of what Jana's just describing is very much in line with that. I think too often communities are left out of things that in fact then affect them very deeply, and this is the kind of approach that I think is good. I think good also looks like tools that support learning, high quality experiences. We have decades, centuries even, of research on what works in classrooms. We know a lot about teaching and learning. And too often, tools disregard or are not rooted in that science. And so good looks like practices that are embedded. So say there's an AI platform that's been adopted. To what extent is it being rooted in the science of learning, of what we know actually produces positive learning outcomes? We can do that. That's good. Good also looks like critical thinking. So there's a lot of concern about this cognitive offloading that AI enables. And one of the things that came out of the report that I was just reading was that students are simultaneously using AI more and increasingly concerned about that cognitive offloading, not the term that they're using, but the critical thinking. They're concerned about their own critical thinking abilities while also using it more. So good looks like not taking away their opportunities for deep critical thinking. And it looks like equity and access. Good looks like, well, take socioeconomics, for example. One of the stats I was reading about is that 67% of low poverty districts have trained teachers on AI use compared to just 39% of high poverty districts. Now, that stands in contrast, of course, to what teachers are themselves reporting about their access, but we know that this kind of division holds true for pretty much everything else about education and teaching, teacher turnover, for example. And so we're seeing a similar trend. This is an opportunity for us to right that. So good would look like equity in terms of access. It also would be equitable in terms of, or it would be appropriate in terms of not harming populations. So plagiarism trackers are notorious for overestimating the types and degree of plagiarism for students for whom English is not their second language. So often, they get flagged actually 5 times as often for using AI inaccurately. So good looks like lots of things, but those are a few.
Okay, so we know what good looks like. How do we make, I'm staying with you, Penny.
Okay.
How do we make this actionable in the real world? How do you make it happen? I mean, you mentioned many things, access.
Well, I'm a teacher educator. So I come at that often from the fact that I think that educators are sort of force multipliers. That is that when we prepare educators to do this work or to do any work, we are not only affecting that generation, but generations to come. So we have this immediate force multiplier effect. So I think one of the key strategies needs to be investing in our educator workforce, if you will, and the leadership to make sure that they have the training and skills that are needed. And then the other piece is trustworthy tools that help us actually assess and evaluate what the effects are. And that's why I'm so excited about the index, is because that's the tool that we haven't had, frankly, for many other initiatives in education. But we have the chance to get this right. And How many steps behind do you keep saying we are?
12.
12.
It's a random
Okay.
number. But,
I was thinking it was 14, so I'm a little bit, that's
We
optimistic.
made progress
There are days
today.
I feel
We
this
made
way.
progress today.
We made progress today. Last night it was 14 at dinner. So those are, that is really why I think we have this opportunity to do it right. Yeah.
Okay, Janet, how do we ensure that this becomes something educators and institutions actually use? I don't know, incentives. How do we make sure that actually people will bite rather than just adopt another framework that may be all big on words and principles but no measurement? So how do you market this? How do you make sure that people take it?
So I think this is the part of the equation that's not rocket science. I think this is the easier part, honestly. If you think about product, I come from a tech product background. You look at a user journey, right? And if you are then introducing a new product that has a value proposition that solves a problem, you look at the user journey and see how you embed this tool, right? You don't say, like, let me take them completely out of their day-to-day user journey and introduce an entirely new process. That happens, but that's when there's more transformation going on. We're not looking for that. We're looking at what is their current user journey, and honestly, with AI, it's been very haphazard, right? And how do we streamline that, and how do we provide something that layers on very nicely, very seamlessly, and this is where I keep going back to the co-creation, involving teachers, involving education leadership in that discussion of understanding where does it fit best, right? Is it, and also in what format? Is it a document, is it training, or is it an automated tool? And so that's what we're hoping to learn with the partnership with Wheelock. It's not just our researchers, but also access to school districts that are struggling with this problem, that want to have a seat at the table for this conversation, because that's the only way it gets used. But once we have the right folks at the right table, and when I say the right folks, it's representation from all aspects, and this is where we thought a lot about what we would call this index. We call it the AI Safety Index, the AI Efficacy Index. We went bold with the word ethics because that's how we want to lead. That means we are inclusive about who's at the table, and that's so incredibly important, and also a reason why we were very biased in our partnership with Wheelock, because there is a huge equity theme in the history of Wheelock. But once you have everyone at the table, I don't think it's rocket science. We've done this before with products over and over, and we can do it here too.
So embedding it in the schools, will work much better than just putting news articles and.
We need thought leadership as well. Absolutely. I think this is where this has to be a collective effort. And the role we're playing is in the measurement space because that allows better decision making. But this is where we're partnering with multiple organizations on also surfacing this to mainstream narratives, right? We want more people to care about the problem we're trying to solve.
And if I could just add, I think it is something that, it increases accountability and trustworthiness for schools and districts. And so it solves a genuine problem. And it's not an add-on, it's something that exists, these challenges are real, people are feeling them every day. It's not a hard sell to think that this is actually, especially since it's clearly from a nonprofit and for the public good, and very, very clearly that is in the language. So it's not like peddling. So.
Sonia, I'll go back to you. So from a foundation perspective, what kind of infrastructure or field building efforts are most needed right now to help education system navigate AI responsibly? And if you want to maybe zoom in on what we just talked about in terms of getting schools to work with the AI index and so on.
Yeah, so historically, we've done a lot of work around responsible AI. So we have a responsible AI and tech justice guide that the Kapor Foundation's education team has put out. And I think that that is a prompting exercise for school districts in terms of like, what are the things that you should consider when you are thinking about utilizing AI in the classroom. And so I think that there's an exercise in there, and I think we see this a lot when we go out into our district implementation sites, which is we can't only start at the educator lens, or we can't only start at the family lens. I think like when we're going into districts, we've been very intentional about bringing together that cross-collaborative partnership in terms of we do need principals or administrators at the table. We need counselors at the table. We need like the master schedule planner at the table. And we really need to be on the same page with respect to how do we define responsible AI? How do we define like ethical use and ethical AI within the classroom? And so we need to start with a common understanding of what that actually means. And then from there, we can build out. We need to build out like policies that can actually be implemented and also iterated over time. I think that that's one thing with AI evolving so quickly, is that policy can no longer be this one piece of paper that is drafted at the beginning, and that's what we're going to stick with, because it's just evolving. The technology is evolving so quickly that policy needs to continue to be revised over time and also just implemented. And I think just bringing into awareness, a lot of districts are very siloed in how policies are created, and then who even knows about that policy. I'll say in one of our districts, instructional tech is owning the AI tool use policy. Our computer science coordinator had no idea that that was happening. And so it's like moments like that where we're like, oh, like we really need to start with like this connector piece in terms of how do you start connecting districts and the folks that are needed in that conversation to be able to make more of the systems change, because we already know that like building an individual's capacity or competency in AI literacy, AI tool usage, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to diffuse over to the entirety of the school. So how do we think about it from a systems perspective to really push things forward?
And while you're talking, I'm just thinking about how you're not going to get all the schools to do this at the same time. You're going to start with some schools, and the fact that one school has done it, then you can go to the next school and says, hey, this is what your peers there did. It will feel less ominous because I can follow the script in a way. I can, okay, well, it will be I may do it differently because of all these differences, but I feel like sharing the progress that people are making with this tool will make its adoption a little easier every time we go to different districts. So I believe that would be a very important thing for organizations like yours to help with.
Absolutely, and I think that there's, so we talked a little bit about like how frameworks are just on a shelf somewhere and like people are like, great, like we can check that off the list, but then how is that then utilized? I think that the same thing needs to carry over in terms of, okay, now I've put into motion this within one district or two districts, but let's actually think about like what types of resources do we need to develop that can then sustain into other school districts. So like standard operating procedures and things like that, or even like prompting questions so that districts can start learning from each other. And again, this goes back to like research practice partnerships in terms of this is the moment in time where we need the evaluative feedback loop. We need to know what's working. We need to know quantitatively what's working. We need to know qualitatively what's working, because like the quantitative, we can do all the pre-post tests in the world, but then like you get to a school district and you're like, oh, the secretary or the front office person is the one that like handled all the scheduling, and that person was out for 2 weeks, and that's why that didn't happen. And so like I really love the idea of needing both quantitative and qualitative research to really inform the process of AI implementation within the school district, and then being able to take that knowledge and bring it forward. And that is like the research field building that's needed that goes alongside implementation. I don't think that they can sit separate from each other, and they really need to talk to each other and then push folks forward within the educational system.
Great. Okay, before we open it up for questions from the audience in about 5 minutes, I'd like to sort of switch to think about looking ahead. And I'll start with a question to Wesley. We are starting with the AI Ethics Index with education, but how does this extend beyond schools? What other sectors might use this tool?
Just about anything can use this tool, I suppose. My science background was what inspired the design of the AI Ethics Index. So when I mentioned chemistry before, that was quite literally the inspiration for it. Trying to imagine a flexible system that would mean you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every time you wanted to move ethical questions into a new domain of human activity. And that's what the AI ethics delivers you. A rock-solid, theoretically extremely well-grounded system that's incredibly agile, like the periodic table of elements itself. So the thing is, you can't do everything at once, and you have to do something first. And I believe Janet thinks that the K-12 domain is just the most urgent one we can think of, particularly since there's not a lot of native revenue opportunities to deal with something like that. Schools are among the least well-funded parts of our entire civilization. So that's the place to kick in the effort at the beginning. But the system is built to move very, very quickly into one area after another whenever the opportunity arises.
And I think that just going back a while, education is, we should start there, is because of what Penny said about this multiplicative, false multiplier, but it can be the opposite if you don't act quick.
Right.
It's the force divider. If you are late into this, it's generational now. So I think this is really important. And, I was sitting here, I'm not a K-12 expert by any means, but I'm in higher education. And I worry about AI introduction, even in higher education. When I think about PhD training, we had discussions in our unit about that, because what's happening to the PhD pipeline if we're going to rely on AI to do the kind of things that PhD students were trained to do before they actually were able to contribute to the field? So I think this is just disrupting lots of places, but nothing is more important than K-12, because that's basically where it starts. So totally agree. I have a question that I'm going to ask any one of you to just, address. If we get this right, what would success look like in the next, let's say, 2 or 3 years? Like, looking back 2 years from now, says, what do you think would be success? How do you measure that, or how do you evaluate it? And anybody can jump in.
I think we move from speculation to evidence. I think that's what we're doing is speculating right now. It's taking a bet, and I think most of the time we'll be okay, but it's for the times when it isn't, right? And also the invisible harms that multiply. So to me, the fundamental conceptual shift is from speculation to evidence, and ensuring generations of healthy growing kids, and productive adults.
So in 2 years, sitting here in this room, we would have 3 schools come and tell us how they evaluated 10 systems and show us the scorecards. Yes?
Hopefully more systems than that.
Okay, good.
Yes, we, through this partnership, I think we're going for 3 years of covering all schools in the country, and kind of using the model of buying power from a collection of school districts, right? Because the whole idea here is we're not going school to try and convince them to use something. Sure, we're going to have a collective that co-design this with us, but we're also going to use the market forces so the market self-regulates, where they place a value on ethics, where they place a value on evidence-based decision-making in AI. So the market starts to then demand that of products, and it starts to kind of start its own cycle of self-regulation. And so we're working in that kind of front part of that cycle. How do we get to critical mass to start creating that movement within K through 12 education?
Sonia, Penny, Wesley, what does a success look like 2 years from now?
I think certainly I would agree with that. From a sort of on-the-ground perspective, I think it looks like schools having a trustworthy way to make important decisions that positively affect all learners.
Okay.
I've got one
Please.
thing to add. What does success look like? Artificial general intelligence, in one form or another, you can fight over the definition, but it's coming. And to be positioned to deal with artificial general intelligence is one of the most urgent tasks of our time. It's a very complicated challenge, and it feels impossible to solve when we haven't made even the simplest forms of headway against ethical challenges that are just overwhelming us constantly. We need wins. We need complex, strong wins that build our confidence to be able to confront things that are even more difficult just around the corner. These things are coming, and we cannot just assume we're going to be able to solve it. We need to win on the way to winning something harder. That's what success looks like to me.
Thank you. QR codes, please send us your question. There's one final question I'd like to, before we move to the Q&A to everyone, to Penny. So starting tomorrow, what would be one thing you'd like educators to start doing differently?
So I learned this term recently from a UNESCO report I was reading, which may be familiar to many of you, but it was new to me, and that is algorithmic conscience. And it was really the idea that, that if educators help students develop algorithmic consciences, then they would be engaged in understanding the bias that's baked into an AI tool, for example. They would understand how to get useful outputs and prompts, but they would really go much farther to understanding, peeling back the layers, if you will, of such a thing. And I think we stop short. We're like, oh yeah, teach them how to do prompts, that sort of thing. But really, it's getting into what makes the tool work, what's baked into the tool. And so in order to help students develop that conscience, we need to also first start with educators. So they would need to do that, which means that we all need to be doing it. So that's what I would say I'd like educators to do, but I'd also like to add what I'd like everyone here to do, if I may, which is a little bit of a call to action. And I know we've got questions coming, but we're really looking for colleagues and partners in this work. So I just want to plant that seed with you all that if you're hearing things that are interesting and exciting to you, that I hope you will reach out to us in any way, because we're eager to continue these conversations. And I know each one of you has at least 3 stories to add to the ones that we have. So, questions?
Thank you. Please join me in giving a big round of applause to our panelists. And now I'll open it up for discussion and questions. So make sure to send your question to the QR. Here's the first question I have. What does this mean for rural communities? How can this index be leveraged? So who wants to jump on that question?
I can start there.
Jenna.
So in fact, we haven't unveiled our partnerships yet, but we're speaking with many regional nonprofits in doing this work. And it's interesting that we're actually starting in the more rural communities that have less access to resources in terms of training and information on how to use AI. And we take the approach of let's start where it's really hard so that it's easy to replicate elsewhere. And so we are hands-on with our rural communities. And problems there are different, and this is where the flexibility of the index comes into play. But it's so important for us to actually start there. In fact, I think Boston might be one of the later states we touch, because I'm having dramatically different conversations with a lot of Boston public school teachers. They are taking a more careful approach. They are looking for more evidence. They are pointing at examples where they see schools that have wildly adopted AI and have things go wrong. And so we're actually trying to go where it's most urgently needed right now. So thank you for that question. It's what we think about a lot.
I have a lot of questions here. I'm just scrolling through it. Wow, it's great, really fantastic. So I don't think we'll get all of them, so I'll have the luxury of picking from them. Here's a question. How can we encourage critical thinking with our teens while mitigating academic dishonesty? Many teens are over-depends on AI, and in their development were also impacted by the pandemic. It's like a double whammy. Any thoughts on that? And I have lots of questions, so quick answers.
I think getting students involved in the actual development of AI tools helps them understand really what goes into it. And that's a really powerful tool. And we have a faculty member or two who are actually experimenting with that idea, with co-constructing tools with students. And I think they begin to see and think critically about a lot of things when they do that.
Actually, there's another related question, Rushad. How do you thoughtfully bring parents, community members, and other external stakeholders into these conversations of appropriate AI utilization?
I just want to say, let parents know that they can demand audits. Empower them. Say, look, it's okay for you to say to your school systems, we want an audit of this product that you're putting in front of our kid. Everyone should be demanding that. It should be really noisy. It should be universal. And as soon as they know it's possible, they will do that.
Okay. Another question. For students in the room, so we have some students in the room, what are some new opportunities in this field for undergraduates, graduate students? What jobs might exist in the future? Is there a new future for a philosophy major? So I take it that this question is coming from a philosophy major.
Well, that's a question for you, Professor of Ethics.
You have to answer that
Theology.
question.
It's a really confusing question. I don't think anyone really knows. Lots of people have got all sorts of ideas, but the economy is changing extremely quickly. And the effects of it that we can imagine are clear, but only maybe 2 years ahead. And trying to figure out what it's going to mean for people starting college now who are going to be looking for jobs 4 years from now, it's nearly impossible. You can see that people are gravitating back towards the humanities from the tech industry, partly because they're questing for some kind of meaning, I think, partly because they're disappointed by the fact that so many people with tech training are struggling to find jobs. So you can see trends like that. But that trend only lasts as far as we can see, which is not very far at the moment. So the honest answer is we just don't know much.
I do think that a lot of companies are hiring AI safety researchers. So if we're thinking about job fields in this arena, Just Horizons is also going to grow our teams from both a technical standpoint and our social sciences standpoint. And so I hope next year when we have this conversation, I'll be able to say, look, job growth has increased by 50% in AI safety, or maybe 100%. But it's there and it's growing.
Okay, I'm told that time is up, so I cannot take more questions. There's a whole bunch of them we'll share. So So once more, let's thank our panelists for such a thoughtful and important discussion. And I really want to thank you all for joining us in Boston Tech Week here at BU. We hope today's conversation sparks new collaborations across education, industry, philanthropy, research, and public service. Please stay connected with us as this partnership develops. We also invite startups, companies, philanthropists, and institutional partners to continue the conversation with Boston University and Just Horizons Alliance. And I'd like to invite, here you are, to say a few words about Boston Tech Week and BU, and please, John.
Thank you. A lot of technology up here, wow. Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, one or the other. My name is Costa Ligris. I am a senior advisor to the leadership here at BU on innovation and entrepreneurship. Before we wrap up, I want to thank everybody. Really incredible job with this panel, and a special thank you to all of our speakers for being here, our faculty, students, partners. A special thank you to my friends at Oracle for helping us sponsor Tech Week this week here at Boston University with 3 incredible events. One more to go. I think what makes gatherings like this very special isn't just the ideas that are shared on the stage, but it's the relationships that are built in collaboration. So I hope to meet many of you during our reception afterwards. Boston is having a moment right now, and more importantly, Boston is building a movement. And I think what we're witnessing is the convergence of world-class research and entrepreneurial talent, industry and private sector engagement, and investment around one of the most transformative technologies of our lifetime, AI. And BU intends to be at the center of that movement. I can say that with great confidence. And BU is open for business. We're open for partnerships, for research collaboration, for entrepreneurship, thought leadership, for industry engagement. We're open for anyone who wants to really help shape the future responsibly and boldly. And so before you leave tonight, I have one simple request. If you could take out your phone, scan this QR code, tell us a little bit more about yourself, your organization, how you'd like to partner or engage with us. My colleagues and I will follow up with anybody interested in having conversations around research, recruiting talent, startup collaboration, and the like. So, tonight's not the finish line. This is the starting point, and I think that it's a really critical time for the future of the innovation ecosystem here in Boston. So, thank you again for joining us. Again, thank you to Oracle. Azra, thank you for doing such an incredible job. I did a panel on Thursday. It's not easy when you have so many incredible thought leaders, and there were a lot of questions. And I noticed there were, you can't tackle them all, but hopefully during the reception, some of our panelists will stay around and answer some questions one-on-one. I look forward to meeting many of you during the reception. And on behalf of the Office of the President and BU, welcome to BU and thank you.
Thank you all one more time, and it's wonderful to have Tech Week here in Boston. I always say that, yeah, Silicon Valley can have the tech, but we have how the tech connects with the rest of the world here in Boston. So with that, please join the reception, and thank you again.